Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you for waiting. Sorry to keep you waiting, and thank you for spending your precious afternoon with us. Before we begin, let me ask with a simple question: Have you ever wondered why you relate to the people the way you do? Why in some relationships you feel secure and safe and open, but in other relationships you might feel anxious, distant, or even unsure of yourself? Very often, it's not about the people we meet. It has got to do with how we experience relationship in our formative years, how we learn to trust, to connect, and even how we learn to protect ourselves. And these patterns unknowingly follow us, quietly shaping the way we show up in our relationships today. So before we dive in, just a quick couple of things to get you started and to make the most of today's session. On the slide, you'll see a QR code. That's where you can download the ebook. So if you are joining us using your laptops, you can just use your phone to download the ebook through the QR code. If not, my colleague has sent you a link in the chat. You can also click on that link to access the QR code. And throughout the sessions, feel free to post your questions on Slido, which we will show in a couple of minutes. And we will be addressing some of your questions at the end of the webinar. So my name is Waifu. I'm the founder of Blended Concept. And we are focused on making social and psychological insights practical, accessible, and grounded in real-life experiences, whether it's in your personal or professional life. And that's what exactly we are doing today. We are focusing on how we can understand our attachment styles so as to better manage and influence our own relationships. And to guide us through today, we have someone who brings both depth and real-world experience into the space. He is Alastair Leo. I think most of you have known him by now. Seasoned trainer, counselor, and coach. He works extensively with individuals, families, and professionals. And he's experienced in helping them deal with their emotional patterns, behaviors, and relationship dynamics. And what I appreciate about Alastair's work is that he makes this concept not just understandable, but easy for you to apply in your everyday life. So without wasting further more time, let me pass it over to Alastair. Alastair, the floor is yours.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you, Waifu, for having me here. Attachment styles and relationship formation, very big mouthful of words, but simply, what does it mean? All right, so we're going to cover this. Why? Because it's important. In order for us to build meaningful relationships, we must first understand our patterns as they show up. And in order for us to do that, they'll have to spend a little bit of time understanding the theories, and then we'll go into practical tips into how to apply this. All right, so Blended Concept, the company that's Waifu, the guy on the left, you see on your screen, and that's me, obviously. We do a lot of all these training services, but we are now moving past this just physical training to provide platforms for people to learn, for people to interact, and to build communities centered around personal growth and development. Our impact, just a very quick one, if you ever came to our website and check in the Google reviews, you'll see that there are thousands of participants that we train annually, companies that we serve, and as a result, there's a wide breadth of experience that we bring to the table, and the people that we bring along for your training are experienced practitioners in this field. Myself, I spent 30 years in the advertising industry communicating, and I am a professional counselor by training and a trainer by profession. All right, so without further ado, here's the QR code for you to drop your questions for the Q&A at the end. So please scan the QR code, and this is for you to also take part in the little polls that we will be presenting throughout this 1-hour webinar. All right, so let's start with a quick self-check. If I were to ask you several questions and your answer is a reflection of your personality trait, your attachment style, this is the first step of any sort of change that we need to address by being more aware, by raising our own level of self-awareness. Right, so there's going to be about 5 questions. The results may not be fixed. This is a quick self-check. This is not a formal assessment, but it is indicative of certain patterns that you may possess. And our desire is for you to be aware of those patterns so that you can understand the strengths behind each of these patterns, the challenges that you may face, and how to work towards building meaningful interactions, both at work as well as at home. Right? All right, so A, B, C, D options. When conflict arises, what do you usually do? Do you address it directly, working towards a solution? Do you try to ease tension very quickly? Or do you just step back and let things kind of settle? Or you respond differently, right? Depending on your level of stress, your response is then according to that level of stress that you may be feeling. Okay? So pick Right? There is no right or wrong answer. These tests are not an assessment of your personality trait. It's just to give you an idea how you may show up and how these patterns may repeat itself both at work, at home, and how then can you best make use of these patterns to your advantage, as well as understand how these may be influencing, being felt by others, and how it may actually shape their perception of you. Okay? All right, so I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. I see some people still keying in. Okay, so let's move on to question number 2. All right, so anyone else who's keying in? All right, I'm going to move to question number 2 shortly. All right, so let's move on to question number 2. When you are giving feedback, what is your tendency? Is it to be clear, balanced, constructive, or to think carefully about how it might be received? And as a result, it may cause you to be a little bit more apprehensive when you give such feedback. Do you keep it brief or avoid it altogether, right? Because you're not very comfortable about giving feedback, because you're concerned about how people may be impacted by the feedback. And the fourth option, it varies depending on the situation. Okay, you are not quite clear about what needs to be done, and again, it depends on the person you're talking to. You may just be a little bit more apprehensive, you may avoid it. Right? Okay, for some of you who entered very depending on the situation, I think you're assuming about that, again, the context, the person you're giving it to, and then you just adjust it accordingly. But I want you to be clear that if this is about your emotional state and the variance is based on your concerns and fears about the person in front of you or your own discomfort, then that is not the answer that you are supposed to key in. If you are someone who is very clear, balanced, and constructive, and that's your priority, getting the feedback across in a respectful manner that's constructive and beneficial for all parties concerned, then that should be your answer. Okay? Good. So let's move on to the third question. When you work with others, what do you usually do? Are you collaborative and you check in as needed? Or are you someone who stays very closely involved? You are one who prefers to work independently, or your involvement kind of varies. All right, again, depending on how comfortable you are with the person you're working with, the teams you're working with. Sometimes you're very involved, sometimes you're kind of working a little bit further. Or it may appear to some that you may be disengaged, okay, preferring to let them work independently. Okay? Okay, good. I hope you're taking note of your scoring. Later on, in a couple of slides' time, the answer key will be revealed and it will give you an indication. Right? Please don't use that as a label. Some parts of it you may kind of disagree with it, but it is indicating to you by and large how you respond and interact with others, both in a collaborative situation as well as in a stressful situation. Okay? Right, let's move on to question number 4. When receiving feedback, okay, you use it to improve, you reflect on it, and you may seek reassurance because you're uncomfortable with it. You take what's useful and you just move on, disregarding the rest. And the last one again, depending on the situation. Okay? Your reaction depends a lot on the nature of the feedback, the content of the feedback, the way it's being given, or even the person giving you the feedback. Okay, good. So just as a reminder again, when the scoring is reviewed, please take it with a sense of a little bit pinch of salt, because I think in our minds, different interactions, we interact and we react differently. This test is meant to show you, this quick little self-check is meant to show you what patterns you may possess. But as we go through the content after this, it may just confirm what you believe, or it may just turn it on its head and you say, okay, it's a little bit different. That's also fine. Okay? And the last one, during high pressure periods or stressful moments or engagement that you are going through, are you one who stays steady and focused on the task, steady and focused on what needs to be done? Are you someone who kind of increase your communication level because you need to make sure everyone's on top of it, you're talking a lot more? Or are you someone who kind of dive in, focus on your own task and then tune out everyone else? Or someone who kind of fluctuates? Okay, so fluctuates meaning you may seek assurance, you may go in, and at times you just want to pull out and just do things on your own. What is it that you would display, right, during these high pressure moments that you are encountering? Okay, good. All right, so here is the answer key. Each of these alphabets are meant to signify something, all right? And you are, I hope you remember, out of the 5, which alphabet you chose the most. Well, it's indicative. It depends on. So I would like you to think about the scenarios. You may have had a particular scenario and you gave it a particular answer. I want you to look at it in context of how often these patterns show up. Right, so A, secure attachment. I will explain each of these to you shortly. B is anxious attachment style. C is an avoidant attachment style. And D is what we call disorganized. Now, there are strengths in each of these 4. There are challenges that these 4 also present. But more importantly, you must realize that since you do not work in a silo or a vacuum, your attachment styles will impact others. Your attachment styles will shape the team dynamics that you're in. It will shape the culture, and it will even shape the others' perception of you and how they choose to step up to you or how they choose to avoid you. Okay? So let's look at your results, right? So some of you keen, those of you who are mostly A, mostly B, C or D, it's anonymous, so don't worry, and it's also not a label that you're trying to put to you, a stick on your forehead, right? So some of you had mostly C's, right? Let's take a look at others, right? Okay, some mostly B's. We got a couple of D's. Okay, good. Each presents its own set of challenges. Each presents its own set of strengths. So we will look at all of these. We will also recognize that there are times when we present ourselves in one of these 4 different personality traits, but there will be recurring themes. There will be recurring themes that may impact others, that may also impact us, that we need to be mindful of, okay? Okay, all right, so without further ado, let's go into the different attachment styles. And, before we go into that, what do you think may have led to this particular style of interaction that you are displaying with others? Okay, so this is again your opinion, and we will go into a little bit more detail about where these styles are formed, how these styles are formed, and how we can actually become a little bit more adaptive when we work with the style that presents itself. Okay, so what do you think might have led to your attachment style based on what you do know? Okay, yes, family upbringing could be one of those. Impressions we have, past experiences, good. Childhood upbringing, yes, and relationship with parents, yeah. Interaction during formative years, excellent, right? So there are some of you who are, again, quite clear about these parent style, stress levels, foreseeing ourselves, good, okay. following others' cue, right? That makes sense. Relationships, siblings, personal experiences. Yep. Yes, work environment. Yes. So, in a nutshell, if you look at all these things, the factors that jump up, the themes that recur will be environmental. Right? And as part of our reaction to the environment, whether it is us with a parent figure, caregiver, us sideways with the people around us with subordinates, us with seniors, all these things do kind of create impressions about ourselves and the perception of the world around us. And it affects and it comes out even more when we are faced with stressful situations and circumstances, right? But attachment styles aren't in and of itself anything to be worried about. It is not necessarily going to follow you for the rest of your life, right? So you have formative experiences, you have shaped by it. The question you have is, are you willing, once you're aware of whether these styles and patterns are useful, willing and able to do something about it? So many people become aware, but they feel helpless because they don't kind of know what they can do about it. So for the rest of today's session, we are going to learn a little bit more about the 4 attachment styles, where it comes from, and how we should actually view this. Right? So the way we attach ourselves to others, the way we distance, the way we connect, it is a lens through which we begin to understand. Right? And in order for us to grow and develop into a little bit more useful, have more useful, meaningful interaction with others, it's useful for us to note the patterns that are not useful. So the science behind it, where did all this come from? So attachment style are patterns in which we communicate, build trust. Can we connect? Can we draw close? Is it safe to draw close? Or should we distance ourselves because we may fear being disappointed? Over time, these reactions begin to ingrain itself, right? And we begin to repeat it. So there will be a pattern that is formed during our formative years, and over the years, our repeated experiences either begin to shape that or entrench it. John Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth, his student, were the first ones who came up with this theory of attachment style. But if you look at Erik Erikson's developmental stages, he already brought this up. He said the first 18 months of any child's life is how they are going to be affected. Their interactions with caregivers, the interactions with the environment is going to shape the way they see the world. It's going to shape the way they make sense of the world. So imagine an 18-month-old, a baby who is between this 18-month period can only make sense of what's going on through how they express their emotions, right? So if there's fear, they'll cry. And if there's reassurance given, the fear will subside and they will feel a sense of predictability. But if they have this sense of inconsistency and there is no predictability, 2 things can happen. And their early interactions with caregivers are paramount. These experiences can lead to 2 outcomes. 1, they feel a little bit anxious, or they feel that they should avoid. Right? So how do these patterns move forward in life? Well, it affects us through our personal relationships. Now, personal relationships could be familial, could be social, but more often than not, the closer you are with the people around you, the more these patterns will show up. And as a result, if you are in a workspace, team interactions, feedback conversations, pressure periods in your response to this, all these things will show up. Right? The patterns are not fixed. Do not be overly concerned, or do not go around identifying your colleague or your loved one and sticking a label on their forehead. These patterns are meant to help us understand and to work with so that we can be better versions of ourselves. Right? So most people have tendencies. I mean, as I did the test and I look at my own patterns, there are periods of time, depending on where I am, depending on what I'm doing, that these individual patterns may show up. The challenge is, are you aware of when the unhelpful types of behavior show up, and you are quick to correct it and quick to make sure that the people around you are not affected by it. Okay? So the goal is, as it says, awareness, not categorization. So let's talk about the 4 attachment styles. Right? So to give you an understanding of what these are: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. As the term implies, a person who's secure tends to be a bit more comfortable around people, whether it is to work collaboratively with them. They're also comfortable doing things on their own, whether it needs to be working independently. They have a base where they can operate from. Communication is quite clear, respectful, direct, There's no ambiguity. There's no concern about how people they are not too focused on how would people receive what I say, and therefore they kind of modify what needs to be said until it becomes palatable, but it may lose its impact. And they are very open to feedback, right? They are able to understand that when people give them feedback, they don't take things personally, and they are able to work on it. How this helps? It builds trust. It allows the people around them to feel safe. Safe to ask questions, safe to point out, safe to comment, and there is a strong balance if you look at the way they deal with the task on hand, as well as the relationships around them. There is a nice balance between the two. It's not too focused on tasks at the expense of relationship, or vice versa. And the ability to handle feedback, constructive. They'll sit down, they'll process, they check in to get clarity. But the challenge that someone with a secure attachment may face is the assumption they have that others are equally comfortable with their openness. Right? So if I am a secure person and I talk to a colleague or maybe a subordinate and I point out to them the mistakes that they may have made over the last few reports they gave to me, and the way I say it is not rude, but it is open, frank, the other person on receiving end, I would assume that they are like me and they will be able to take it without realizing that the person may accept it but may feel fearful or may be upset by it, and behind my back they may start talking about it. Right? So the other part of it is they may tend to assume that other people are comfortable working independently as well, and they may overlook when others need support. Now, these are some challenges that if they are a little bit more aware, they can actually do something about it. Anxious attachment. What does it look like? When you see someone who seems to seek reassurance, more check-in than normal, it is a sense that they are trying very hard to make sure the work they do, perhaps they don't make mistakes, or they're trying to get reassurance. So this over-communication, this follow-up, right, often follow-up, or maybe that sensitivity, right, an email that is sent, they don't get a response as fast as they want, and they begin to feel anxious. They read a lot into tone. Any sort of ambiguity fills them with a bit of dread. These are things that may indicate an anxious attachment style. Now, strength. They are very sensitive, and as a result, team dynamics, team relationship, interactions, they are a little bit more attuned than others. They are quite proactive, maintaining relationships. It's very important for them that relationships are maintained. They go out of their way to build relationships with people around them. They have an awareness of the needs of others because they're assuming that others are like them. So they are quite reassuring. If people give them feedback check in with them often, they have no problem responding. Okay? Challenge. How is that being received by others? These excessive reassurances you seek may make the team members who are a little bit more secure, or those who are avoidant, which I'll come to later, feel that this person is again at it, right? They may find it that a little bit irritable, they get a little bit more irritated. They can misread silence as rejection, right? People who are occupied with whatever it is, take a little bit longer to respond to them. They will become quite fretful. This whole constant thinking about how people are receiving them, how their words and behaviors may be interpreted, can keep them at a very high state of alert, which may result in the risk of burnout. Okay? Being so worried about how people will perceive them, how they're perceived by others, may cause them to neglect the mental component, the mental aspect of themselves, and before they know it, they may wake up one day and say, I'm so tired. Okay? I'm so tired of all these things. Avoidant. It looks like that capable leader or the capable teammate who is, you give them a task and you tell them exactly what needs to be done, check in with them, and then off they go. Right? And if you come in and check in with them, they may keep you guessing because they prefer to work in silence and autonomy, and they may get a bit irritated if you continue to check in with them constantly. They are very, very much task focused. So these are guys that colleagues that keep communication to a minimum. They are the ones that if you ask them out for lunch, they may turn you down. Ask them out for social outing, they may be kind of reluctant to go. Let's just keep it professional. Let's just get the work done. Okay? Strength. Very independent, sense of self-sufficiency, right? Very efficient, very task-focused, comfortable making decisions independently. Right? These are the kind of teammates, if you are working with high projects with tight deadlines, you give them very clear instructions, they know what needs to be done, and then off they go. The challenge you face is that if this is a team project and they have to collaborate, they have to give their input, they have to come back and they have to gather in huddles, they may appear distant, they may appear disengaged, right? It doesn't mean they are. They may be very busy focusing on what needs to be done in the back of their mind while you're trying to talk things through. They may feel that the input that you're hoping to get from them may be less than forthcoming, right? So less likely to seek help also when they need it. Because they may have this belief that their abilities and capabilities define them. They are not defined by relationships. They are defined by how well they present themselves and how capable they are. Disorganized. So what does a disorganized attachment style look like? Well, it's like the person who is kind of inconsistent in the way they behave. They shift between engagement 1 minute and withdrawal another. The reactions under stress could be one where they come in close and they are collaborative, or they pull back. So you kind of wonder where they're coming from. And that is in itself going to be a challenge because the inconsistency will affect people around them. The strength they possess. Now, if guided and if you learn what their styles are like, they are quite flexible depending on the situation because they can kind of go close and kind of draw out, right? So they may be able to, with the kind of awareness, bring relational and task awareness depending on what is required. But the downside is if they are not aware of their own particular style, it may be scary for the people working around them, right? Because they can't the inconsistency makes others find it difficult to rely on them. And for themselves, a disorganized attachment style, they may struggle with trust under stress. Right? So under stress, it's difficult to kind of predict what their behaviors will be like. So if you look at this as a spectrum, right? So on the bottom spectrum is orientation towards others, and one emotional regulation and reactiveness and the security that they are demonstrating. Obviously, on the right quadrant, we have the secure attachment style, someone who is connection seeking, yet at the same time secure enough to get things done. The anxious quadrant on the bottom right is one who is more concerned about relationship, more concerned with how they are perceived by others, and more concerned about connecting. And at the same time, it may affect the work that needs to be done. Top left quadrant, avoidant. So this is a protective instinct. It is not a flaw. It is something that they have learned over the years through early childhood experiences that it is better to trust themselves, to be independent, than to depend and rely on others. The bottom left-hand quadrant, that's where the disorganized style comes in. They want to connect with others, and they feel very anxious when they are not connecting. But when others draw near to them, they may then at the back of their mind ask themselves, can this interaction be trusted? Is it sustainable? Maybe it's not. And then the flip of the switch, they become avoidant. So this toggling between anxious and avoidant causes other people to get really, really confused. All right, so imagine this at the workplace. Now, take this out and put it into the home context. Imagine a person who is stressing out at work and has got other issues, issues with their spouses, or family members, in-laws. These attachment styles, when they do appear, can be a little bit difficult for the people around them to navigate. Right? So, based on that, maybe the question we have to ask ourselves is, how are relationships formed? And perhaps in the formation of relationships, we can learn something about how we can enhance the relationship we have with others, or perhaps diminish some of the negative challenges that we see during our interaction with others. So when we talk about relationship formation, it just doesn't happen overnight, okay? So all relationships, whether workplace, home, sometimes home we take things for granted because we've been together for decades, right? But relationships are formed through repeated interactions. The impressions we give to others, the assumptions they make of us, the assumptions we make of them. There's no one single moment that defines a relationship. It's a cluster of small interaction. And these patterns over time will accumulate. And when these patterns accumulate, they become compounded. Right? So all these attachment styles, communication styles, your responsiveness, whether you distance, all these things signal to others, can I be trusted? Can I trust you? Right? Can we grow the relationship, or is it best for us to keep our distance? And unfortunately, impressions do matter. Initial interactions already set the tone, right? So when you have an initial reaction where a person may receive something less than helpful, their response over time can be built on that, right? So the 4 stages of relationship formation: our initial reaction, the building phase, the established relationship patterns, communication styles, and stresses. When stresses appear and you're under stress, how do you usually show up? So when we talk about the initial reaction, initial interaction, at this stage, we are now working on a project. We are now talking through what needs to be done. We are talking about roles. We are talking about responsibilities. These communication styles that you may bring to the discussion will give either a positive impression on, to the people around you, or it may create something that is less than desirable. And perhaps when there are questions being asked and people come and talk to you, how you respond to them, the pace, the speed, and the details in how you respond signals either you are someone who can be relied on or someone that needs to be checked on, and people begin to start forming assumptions. Now, anytime you have a negative impression of someone, anytime you have a negative emotion surfacing, if you pause and not jump to an unhelpful reaction and take a couple of steps back, you will realize you have formed an assumption. So when you have formed an assumption, the danger is assumptions blind us, right? Because assumptions are kind of like a judgment call that remains fixed in our mind of someone or even ourselves or the situation, that it's kind of immovable. But over time, we begin to realize if we are paying attention and we are more attuned, these assumptions are usually not truth. Right? They are assumptions based on that moment, how we think and how we feel. Now we move on to stage 2, where we talk about the building phase. This is the phase where patterns begin to form. How the habit that you may already possess. Perhaps you're someone who talks a lot about big picture, but you don't really execute. Or maybe someone who is very focused on the execution that you miss the big picture. Or someone who's very focused on task, very focused on relationship. Whatever it is, right? Your communication patterns, the kind of feedback loop that you provide others will begin to either build trust or erode it. It will begin to help. During this phase, people will begin to form impressions of you, and impressions of whether you can be a positive impact or you are going to be someone that they have to be more guarded, right? And over time, assumptions set in, patterns are set, expectations are set, and this is where either relationships begin to blossom and grow or relationships begin to get even more strained and fractured, right? So roles and behaviors become a little bit more consistent, and unfortunately some of these roles, the constant is that you are inconsistent. Okay? We prefer consistency over inconsistency, but over time we may be even blinded by our behaviors. So one of the things that we may want to look out for is how do people interact with us? Because that's a clear sign of how they feel about us and how they think about us. So the interactions become predictable, patterns begin to set in, interactions begin. If, let's say, for example, I am interacting with you, a third party who's observing it may realize things that the two of us may not. Because I may, through my interactions, be triggering your responses, and your responses will be triggering my, and then this whole pattern just goes on a feedback loop. When it comes to stressful moments, when pressures are now beginning to form, cracks will definitely appear. Okay? What happens at this stage? Our default communication style, whether it's excessive over-explaining, whether it's very forceful communication, whether it's withdrawal, whether it's avoidance, all these different styles will come in. And the sensitivity to ambiguity, to tone, whether we are going to increase, decrease, reduce our engagement, all these things are going to show up. Now, unfortunately, when it shows up, we can just write it off and say, it's just due to stress. But the stress doesn't bring out a negative behavior. Very often, if you're honest about it, the stress brings out your true behavior. So how you deal with stress, how you face it, how you form impressions of yourself and others, and how this stress actually builds up in the first place are all signals for you to ask yourself, what really is going on? Am I missing something? Can all these incidents be prevented in the future if I'm a little bit more attuned, a little bit more aware? Okay? So when we talk about different attachment styles across the relationship stages. Let's talk about those with a secure style. Right? In initial interaction, the ability to kind of sense what others need, the ability to present themselves in a confident manner, gives that impression that perhaps these are people, this is someone that we can work with, that we can trust, and future subsequent interactions can either prove it or dispel it. I mean, I can come in and project myself as someone who's charismatic, someone who's trustworthy, someone who's confident, but the minute stressful situation comes in or patterns appear and I begin to realize, hey, I mean, interacting with you, you don't suit my purpose, I can't gain anything from you. All these things will then show whether I'm really truly secure or I'm someone who is basically smart enough to read the room and manipulate others. Okay, so building trust through consistent follow through, and over time establish you're now being seen as someone who's reliable, someone who's balanced, and perhaps you could be an anchor that people can gravitate towards in moments of duress or when they seek help. Under stress, you are usually quite steady, communicate clearly under pressure, okay, and you know what needs to be done and you don't shy away from it. An anxious style, in the initial interaction, they may be coming across as a person who talks a lot, who kind of over-explains themselves, who kinds of tries to say something and then they go around explaining whatever it means, or perhaps they may be seeking validation quite often. The building phase, this frequent check-in, the sensitivity may show others that, hey, what's up with this guy, okay? Is this guy micromanaging me if he's a supervisor? Or is this guy so needy and so unsure about himself that he needs to keep checking in with me? Whatever it is not a flaw, okay? It is not it's not evidence of their competency. It's just their own personality style and the way they think and the way they regulate their emotions. So once it's established, they may need reassurance even when they are on track, even when they're doing well, okay? I mean, to be fair, any human being who's capable would appreciate feedback ever so often, or even assurances. But in an anxious kind of attachment style, this occurs a lot more frequently. And under stress, they may misinterpret silence as rejection. They tend to over-explain and over-communicate. Avoidant, you see someone who is very capable, see someone who has got a very good track record, but you find them a little bit aloof. You find them a little bit cold. You find them a little bit distant. This could be an avoidant attachment style showing up. They are good at what they do, but they are not comfortable with relationship building. All right? It's very much task-oriented. So if I were to be one of these and I'm a senior person, I would gather my team around. We have weekly check-ins and then it's off. Everyone just gets the work done and that's it. Right? I may feel less composed to try to consciously build team relationships, build team culture. Communications usually brief to the point. Relational check-in, like I mentioned, may not be as frequent as some desire. So imagine I'm an avoidant supervisor, or I'm an avoidant subordinate, and I am working with someone who is the opposite, someone who is anxious. Can you imagine the two of us, how we will interact, right? So once it's established, the work is very independent, but unfortunately, all the work, no matter how independent you are, calls for moments of collaboration, interaction with either stakeholders, with clients, and the people around you. When they are under stress, they withdraw even further, finding it very hard to connect with them. Right, so we've been talking a little bit about the workplace. What happens if this avoidant attachment style shows up at home? Okay, I may be fun, I may be humorous, I may be good at what I am, I may be a very good provider, but when my emotions are now, or there's stress, or there's a family member needs emotional validation from me, I may find it very challenging to give this. Okay, disorganized. And disorganized style, initially you come across as a very warm person, and then as you draw closer, you realize they may then withdraw, and then you'll be warm. May look at them and say, oh my goodness, this person's got a little bit of a dual personality type, which may not be far off the mark, but that's how they express themselves. If they draw close and then they find that, hey, hang on a minute, would this person disappoint me? So they second guess themselves and then they pull back. Right? So these inconsistent patterns makes trust very difficult to build. And when it's established, the unpredictable nature of a disorganized attachment style makes everyone around them walk on thin ice. So if you have a very disorganized kind of attachment style at home, you can be very sure that the people around you will find it very difficult to connect. At the workplace, no problem. I just distance myself. But when I'm stuck with you under the same roof and I have no choice but to engage with you, I may find that it is better to keep my distance. But the problem is, if I keep my distance and you are at your anxious mode and you draw close to me, and I say, okay, I draw close back to you, and then you become avoidant again, then it makes me very confused. Right? So under stress, this oscillating between pulling in and pulling out may make everyone around very uncomfortable, very unpredictable. So how does this matter? So from the perspective of leaders, you must realize that your own personal attachment style will affect not just you, but everyone else around you. It may also create a negative perception of your role as a leader when it comes to your top looking down and assessing you. So a leadership style, you may come across as very capable, right? You're very task-driven and you're getting all your KPIs met, all your numbers are being met. But again, at some point, HR may come up to you and say, why is your team turnover so high? Okay? Why are your team members coming to me to complain about pressure? Aren't you talking to them? Can't they approach you? So a balanced leader is one who is focused on, yes, let's get the work done, but let's not lose sight of the fact that it's people who get the work done. So there's a kind of nice balance. If you're a leader who's anxious, right, and you kind of feel that people, while they're good at their job, needs, because of your anxious attachment style, to be monitored. You're seeking assurance from them. It could be akin to a seagull management style. You're coming in, you're coming in, and everyone feels, oh my God, this person is at it again. Right? Disorganized, you may be very good at what you were doing before. You get promoted to be a leader, and you enjoy the perks of that leadership position. You get a nice bump in your salary, but you are not comfortable. Okay, you're not comfortable because you are not quite sure, should I draw close to my team? Should I pull back from my team? And then if you look at your own personal attachment style, it will fluctuate between avoidant and anxious. And this disorganized style may cause you to at some point withdraw, at some point become very anxious, draw in. So this whole idea of your kind of style may cause results to drop because people are not really focused on the work that need to be done because they're so worried about you, they're more focused on pleasing you. Right? They're more focused on engaging and staying on your good side, whatever it is. That relationships among each other may be very fractured. The work that needs to be done, the performances will begin to drop. Okay? So, talking a little bit about all these different styles as a leader, strength is very much building strength, rapport and trust. Relationship-focused leader is someone who perhaps because of their anxious attachment style is very focused on teams, individuals, and they kind of lose sight of what needs to be done, and then their focus is more on relationship. While they encourage open communication, they may find it difficult to have difficult conversations, right? So if I were to come up with a team member that I feel close to, because we can talk about a lot of things, we have a lot of things in common, I may find it very challenging to tell you that your performance hasn't been hitting its mark. I may find it difficult to point out certain things to you. Right, because I'm more concerned. Big picture, strategic direction, clarity, and all this, yes, it's important. Yes, they are aware of it, but it doesn't mean that they're 100% comfortable in carrying out. And as a result, accountability is kind of reduced. Task-driven, someone who may be a little bit more on an avoidant attachment style. Strength, very clear. Direction, expectations, outcomes, very focused, very efficient when it comes to decision making, okay? But when it comes to emotions, connections, they may not score very high. And as a result, people may feel, or they may come across as distant, unapproachable, relational dynamics not really important, let's just get the work done. So certain occupations, fantastic. Everyone's just focusing on their targets, getting the stuff done, that's fine. But when you are in a team that requires collaboration, constant meeting up to make sure everyone's on track, there's a lot of moving parts. This is where it gets a bit tricky, right? Because of the reduction in team engagement, team members may have to find ways of engaging behind your back, and as a result, you may find that, hey, why are there little groups of people forming all over the place, right? Disengage. Strength. Everyone would love to work with a disengaged leader because you know the guy is not going to hover around you, and when he hovers around you, you know the next moment he will distance himself. So that predictability, and the challenge is that the whole team may not be quite clear about what needs to be done. Because they're so unpredictable, communication is so inconsistent, the direction and clarity of what needs to be done is not really there. Okay? Team members don't feel supported, and as a result, they may support one another, or they may feel that, hey, just get the work done and finish the work and then just move on. Okay? When it comes to balance, we are talking about someone who is clear about what needs to be done, clear about who is doing what, and clear about boundaries and willing to step up and speak up. Right? So they are this consistent communication style is very helpful. They are clear, they are direct. Right? So clear and direct helps everyone understand if this is my responsibility and I'm not carrying it out well, it's impacting others, I will get a call and I will get a meeting with this leader, and I'm comfortable with it because he knows and I know that this is meant to improve everyone's performance. Right? The challenge is that when you assume everyone operates similarly, you assume people who need help will ask for help. And if you have someone who's an avoidant style, may not be able to ask for help. You may look at someone who's anxious and say, why is this guy coming in to check in so often? Why can't this be more independent? And then it affects. Right? So when individuals who need a little bit more structure, a little bit more support, they may be left hanging. Right? So let's turn a little bit of our application into awareness. Right? What can we do about this? So it's easy to understand that behaviors impact. But let's talk about you on the receiving end of certain kind of attachment style. What feels normal could be very challenging to others, right? So for example, if I am an avoidant person, I may think that's how we should all operate. And if I have an anxious person or have a disorganized colleague, we may have friction that will occur because of our unrecognized differences, right? So it's not a personality flaw. It's just that we need to accept that all the attachment styles serve a purpose, right? Just like your fingers and all the fingers in your hand, they are not of the same length, right? Because they serve a purpose, we need to be able to tap on the strengths and mitigate or limit the challenges or the difficult moments by being aware of it and supporting the people around us. So one of the things that we need to shift mentally is, instead of asking ourselves, why this guy like that? Why is this person so micro? Why? We may want to ask ourselves, what might they need in this situation that perhaps they are not getting? Right? Their behaviors are a way of communicating something to us. Right? So when they behave in a certain way, they are communicating a particular attachment style. And when that particular attachment style is being communicated, it's usually to try to address a need that they may have. So if I am an anxious attachment style, my need is assurance. My need is validation that I'm on the right track. My need is guidance. So if I get that, I'm fine. But if I don't understand, or you don't understand that this is what I need, and you avoid giving it to me, then it just makes my life a lot more miserable. Okay? So a couple of scenarios, right, for you to consider. You are working under a manager who kind of exhibits a very strong anxious attachment style through the frequent check-in on your progress, right? Now, maybe every couple of days or couple of hours, even they check in with you, asking for regular updates, and they get kind of upset if you don't respond quickly to them. And even if the work is on track, they kind of monitor you closely. Now, I want you to think of how might you experience this manager? Okay, so this is the part where we are going to get you to actually tell us how you might experience this person and what would be a better way of looking at them so that your interaction would be slightly different. Right? So how do you think you might experience a manager who checks in on you frequently, who kind of, even if things are on track, numbers are going ahead, will continue to check in with you? Good, okay. Yep, right. So you have an attachment person, you may also become anxious as a result, and you may end up avoiding, okay. Slightly pressured, okay, better than manage, right? That's good. If you feel overwhelmed, micromanage, right? Okay, good. So some of you are really keying the second part. How can you be better at it? I'll be annoyed, get frustrated, I start feeling I'm not doing a good job, naggy, hovering, okay? It may begin to trigger you as well, right? Fear that you don't want to make small talk, walking on eggshells, it doesn't trust you, okay? And then as a result, you ask him what is expected. Good. Some of you are already talking about the next part, okay? You'll avoid. So imagine what is this manager's communications telling you about them. Now, if you know that this is a person who is showing anxiety and the impact it has, that you begin to doubt yourself, you begin to get worried, you begin to walk on eggshell, you begin to feel that you cannot trust, what then can you do about it? Okay? What then can you do about it so that the workplace doesn't become scary? I don't want to use the word toxic because it's a very different way of looking at it. The relationship becomes a little bit more proactive rather than reactive. Okay? So how would you reframe your understanding? Okay, some of you already key in. Right? So reframe your understanding means now I understand his need for assurance, his need for updates. I will give him those updates even before he asks. So I become more predictable for him. He begins to trust me a little bit more. But that doesn't mean that his anxious attachment style is going to suddenly disappear overnight. But it can be curbed. All right? It can be managed better. Because if he checks in with me and I realize the last time I gave him an update was like 3 days ago, perhaps I should give him an update every 2 days, for example. Okay? Increase communication, provide, good. Proactive. So this whole idea of being more participatory does help with someone who is anxious. Right? Don't think so much, just press on. Right? Give him more assurance, good. Provide timely updates, affirm him. Okay? So I think one of the things that we need to be very mindful of is that these are traits. If I feel as a subordinate, I have to reassure my manager. Then I begin to wonder whether this manager should even be managing me. I feel like I should be managing the manager, okay? But understand that every person who has been promoted to a level of seniority has demonstrated competency. Unfortunately, some of their pressures that they feel that we may not be aware of could cause them to go to their default kind of attachment style. So it's useful for us to calibrate our own response and to bring things up to a kind of like even things out. Okay? Right, good. Let's move on. You have a scenario where you have an avoidant colleague, someone who prefers to work independently, keeps you communicates only when necessary, provides updates only when necessary. You're unsure about the progress when work is being done. How would you update this? How would you experience this colleague? Okay, I want you to imagine if you are the one on the receiving end. All right, how would you respond, or how would you experience? What are some thoughts you may have about a colleague like this? Okay, I may just skip through the next few examples to give us more time for our Q&A. Sian, okay. Okay. Okay, unreliable, cold, unwilling to foster. I think, okay, also avoid, right? So you respond accordingly. Okay, doesn't want to engage what he's doing, okay. So to be fair, an avoidant colleague is one who can be capable. But if this avoidant colleague is not one who is capable and they're just siaming the work, this is a different thing altogether. We're not talking about an avoidant. Avoidant attachment style usually displays a high level of competency. It's just that as far as work is concerned, they are great. As far as interactions and relationships are concerned, they don't get a very high score. Okay? So what we need to do is, once we understand, that means we need to have more structure, like some of you have said, more structure to be put in place so that everyone, whether you're anxious, whether you're avoidant, whether you're disorganized, this structure keeps us all organized, brings us all together. Updates are frequent. People know when to update, how to update, what to update. And then because of that, things get moving. We don't need for us all to be best friends and relationships to be built outside of working hours, but at least the work gets done in a way that hits everyone's best. Right? Not just getting it done because of whatever needs to be done. Right? Right? So based on that, how would you reframe your understanding? How would you then better deal with a colleague who craves independence? Right? I mean, I have worked with many colleagues of mine who are fantastic at what they do. They are great at coming up with ideas. They are great if you leave them alone, whether you're a developer, you're a programmer, whether you're a video editor, you're a writer, doesn't really matter, right? But then will come a time when you give them that assurance that whatever it is that they have to share is going to be taken into consideration. Then that avoidant attachment style becomes more regulated. And once it becomes more regulated, you see a version of them that is able to connect better than before. Right? So you got to understand that all these attachment styles are a result of our formative years, but they don't have to stay intact. The problem we have is that when we don't understand such attachment styles, and when we react negatively, it just reinforces the fear the person may have, and it causes the attachment style again to become more entrenched. So once you react differently, there's an openness that you bring to the conversation. There's a willingness to collaborate. The structure is there for them to talk, to present ideas of their own. Okay? Then it becomes a lot more helpful. Okay, good. So a lot of you kind of know, right? Private messaging, open communication, assurances, right? Update schedule, timelines. Yes, all these are very clear processes that if in place, it gives us all that space to make sure that we come together and we are clear about what needs to be done and who's doing what. But you remember, during those meetings, those interactions can either be constructive or it can be fearful. Okay? So if I'm an avoidant personality trait and then I come to a meeting and again, someone's out there pushing the agenda and trying to be jovial and friendly and meetings last for hours, then it just makes me a lot more uncomfortable, or vice versa, right? Someone who's an anxious person or disorganized, okay? Right, let's talk about the last one, a secure team member. A team member who is very clear, communicates clearly, balances independence with collaboration, very steady under pressure, often relied on by others, okay? How might others experience this secure team member? I mean, we all want people like that, right? So what happens when we all have a person like this in our team? All right, so you thrive, you have a supportive leader, okay, fantastic. Okay, I just want you to also imagine you get your job done, you feel recognized, you feel affirmed, the sense of collaboration is there, right? All this helps, certainly, okay? And if you're an anxious sort, you feel a lot more reassured, right? So at the same time, you got to ask yourself, a secure attachment style, a leader who presents this, a colleague who presents this, do you think they could be unfairly treated in that their workload increases? The pressure to try to be everything to everyone is actually going to be hurtful and harmful to them. And what would help to maximize the benefits in this situation? Remember, if I am a secure attachment style leader and everyone's gravitating to me, everyone's feeling supported to me, then who supports me? It infers that I can reach out and I know how to take care of myself. Well, what if it's going to be a struggle that I am not used to? So think about it. A secure attachment leader will also need a comfortable environment to thrive, okay? And as a result, everyone in some way has got to move from their own attachment style to one that gives them a bit more secure attachment style so that we can all work together and function better as a team. Okay? Good. And then know that secure enough to ask for support when they need to as well. Fantastic. Okay? Secure attachment leaders usually will not hesitate to reach out to others, will not hesitate to say no, will not hesitate to create boundaries, yes. But to be fair, every person is still a human being. We're not talking about robots, right? We are talking about people who, under different kinds of conditions, pressure, stress, may then fall to one of the other undesirable or less helpful attachment styles because they are finding it difficult. Okay? So if I were a very secure leader and I have gone through a period of stress, I may choose to become an avoidant attachment style because I can't deal with it. Right? So I think moving forward, and summing everything up, what we all need to do is to be mindful about our own communication style, right? When clarity is needed, we need to present it. I don't think there's going to be clarity if I'm not clear myself what I need, what needs to be done. I'm not going to provide clarity to anyone. If all of us could have regular check-in, right, and affirmation, it then helps ease the pressure on everyone. Space. Some of us need more, some of us need less. But at some point in time, we all need the space to do the work we need to do. We do need the space to kind of grow. We also all need to learn how to give feedback, right? To be able to be clear in terms of what we need to say, in terms of what we need to say, when we say it, how we say it. Making our expectations, setting it very clearly, and matching our delivery to the person, right? If I work with someone who's anxious, I want to allay their anxiety so that I can begin to see a lot more of their secure side coming out. Right? I believe that every one of us possesses all the different attachment styles. It shows up in different styles. But yes, that infers that even if I'm an anxious or an avoidant person, I can behave in a secure manner. In order to reduce misinterpretation, we need to be very clear. And as individuals receiving feedback, please don't take everything personally. Okay? Not all behaviors are intentional. Some people are behaving in a way that they may not realize it on their own. Okay? And disengagement may just show that they are avoidant rather than they don't like you. Clinginess may be anxiety. So for us is to think through before we react. Not all misalignment is a result of conflict, and not all misalignment needs to result in conflict. So the last point I'm going to make is consistency is very important. The key to building trust with those around us is to be consistent, to have a spirit of collaboration, right? So if I am a secure person, I want to collaborate. If I'm an anxious person, I also want to collaborate. If I'm an avoidant person, I also want to collaborate. Disorganized, I also want to collaborate, right? So if we all have that collaboration attitude, and if we are all very clear about what we expect from each other, we're all very clear. Now that I have this particular attachment style that I know has been with me for all these decades and I want to outgrow it, then perhaps I need to set boundaries, be a bit clearer about what expectations I have, working styles I prefer, and have these conversations with the people around me. Okay? So the 3 C's, consistency, be predictable. Be someone others can trust. Be someone that others know what to expect. Come with a collaborative attitude. Allow everyone the space to share, to present, input, and to acknowledge effort, and to be very clear about what needs to be done so that no one has to live with any sort of ambiguity. Right. So I'm sorry we overshot a bit. We are going to go into Q&A. Right. So perhaps one takeaway from this webinar that you would like to bring into your next interaction. Right, so just key in what is something that based on your understanding you would want to do differently. If you haven't downloaded the ebook, we're going to present you the QR code. Download the ebook. There are exercises you can do to carry on this conversation and to actually kind of think about what needs to be done so that you can continue to work on it. Okay? Good, right? Identifying the style, that's the first step. Identify your own style. Good, not get personal, be more proactive, right? A reflection of your own style, excellent, okay? Excellent, right? What triggers us also teaches us, right? That other people also can be triggered and to be more sensitive, make necessary adjustments. Excellent, okay? Understanding tendencies, good. The ebook will give you, again, after today's talk, you'll be wondering, what can I do? Maybe I want to repeat this. At some point, this whole video will be edited and uploaded to our YouTube page. But for now, the QR code for the ebook will help you over the next couple of days to continue to think about what we just talked about and continue to work on it. Okay? So to understand as well. Okay, excellent. All right, so I'm going to go into Q&A right now. I'm going to invite Raifu back into, I'm sorry. Oops, where is the Q&A? Oh, you have it? Ah, okay, okay.
Hey, thank you, Alessia, for this conversation.
Okay, so let's take a look at some of the questions that have been asked during the webinar. And then we are going to, again, let's see where it is. Oops, it's gone missing. Oh, there, Q&A. Okay. How can someone move towards secure attachment? All right, so the first thing you need to do is to be aware of your own attachment style. Secure attachment means you are confident in yourself. You have reached that acceptance of who you are as a person, aware of your own strengths, aware of your own challenges, and you are working on improving it. Right? So, secure attachment style takes time, takes effort. I can safely tell you that not all of us were born as secure with a secure attachment style. Some of us are anxious, avoidant, but by being aware, we can take corrective steps and then move towards that. Right? I don't like depending on people. Easier to deal with things on my own. Expect, what should I do? I think managing. I'm not asking you. We're not saying that you should just blindly depend on everyone, but to be aware of the fact that you can't do everything on your own. There are times when you need others. So set very clear expectations of what you need, kind of help you need, and then work. And the willingness to accept that other people have opinions that may be different from yours, but everyone has a point, right? It is our ability to accept different points of view that is helpful.
I also hear a few questions regarding different attachment styles. So, for example, like anxious attachment and partner has a very different style. Or if two persons have insecure attachment style, can they still develop a healthy relationship? I think we have not talked a lot about personal relationship.
Yeah.
So some of these questions are really on the family level.
Okay, so think about workplace and how you have come up with some ways of working towards it. Now, we have to do the same. So if I am in a personal relationship with a spouse with a very different attachment style to mine, the first thing I need to do is to be aware of my own style. Once I'm aware of my own style, what's not helpful is if I go up to my spouse and to remind her of her negative style, right? It's just going to create more tension and conflict. So if I'm aware of my own style and I know I'm avoidant, then my task for me is to be less avoidant, to be willing to sit and have such conversations with an anxious, okay, so my anxious partner may be anxious about many things. Now, me being avoidant and drawing away from things could be one of the things that make her even more anxious. So once I sit down and I communicate in a more secure style, that may reduce her level of anxiety. And the two of us, the way we interact and the way we meet the needs of our kids will determine whether they're going to grow up secure or follow one of our own styles. Okay, so how we deal with stress, how we have difficult conversations in front of our children, how we draw closer or how we pull away when we are struggling will determine whether the child learns from us the best of us or they learn from us the worst of us.
So in the sense that even if we are both anxious and avoidant, we can still have the ability to develop secure attachment
if we are aware of our own style and we are doing something about it. If I'm aware, I'm avoidant, you're aware, you're anxious, and two of us are two of us just waiting for the other person to make changes, then nothing's going to happen.
Okay, this question is interesting because some people say that attachment styles are our formative years is really formed, so it's fixed. So is it possible for someone to have multiple styles that's predominant?
I think it will show up. Okay, so in a workplace, I may be avoidant. In a workplace, I may come across as secure, but at home, I may be avoidant. Right? Remember, we're all socially adept creatures. We know how to interact socially, but when it comes to letting our guard down, and where our guard usually is lowered is at home, not the workplace. Workplace guard is up high. So when we are at home and our guard is down and there are moments of stress, our kids come to us when they need help, our spouse comes to us, how we respond to each of them shows our attachment style. Okay, if you are secure, then you take everything in your stride. Even when you're struggling with stress and there are difficult moments, you're willing to admit, oh my goodness, I'm stuck. Can someone help me? That shows up as a secure style. If you are going to be someone who just clamps down and for hours and for days and just keeps to yourself while you're trying to figure out how to do things, everyone around you will feel that avoidance. Or if you're someone who becomes overly anxious and you become very agitated, everyone around you will also feel your anxiety.
So in the sense that we do have a dominant style, but the way we learn over time, the years to manage it, where actually can kind
mitigate it, kind of reduce it if we find it unhelpful, and then grow the areas that we find more helpful.
Okay, so this is about relationship. I guess someone is in a relationship and the partner is heavily invested very quickly in the relationship. Maybe it's workplace or maybe it's personal.
Why would someone become emotionally invested very quickly? Well, there is a need that needs to be filled. When you go into a relationship, anyone, you're looking to fulfill a need that we may not be having. Okay, so we are willing to invest, and not all, as anyone knows, not all investments will usually turn out well. There'll be some investments that you need to cut loss. But if you're someone who invests very quickly, you may not be really seeking long-term relationship. You're trying to fulfill a short-term need. Okay, I want to be less lonely. I want to feel loved. I want to feel taken care of. And I just jump at the person who shows me any sort of positive behavior. And then as a result, after 6 months, 1 year together, I realized we are not really cut out. Then I begin to wonder, why am I so needy? It's actually, again, depending on your life situation, maybe there are other areas in your life you're feeling stressed, you need to reach out to someone, and that someone comes along. It may not be the best fit in terms of a long-term relationship, but it may be someone that you can have a short-term time, not short-term time, but someone that you can actually interact with to help you, but not be in a long-term relationship with, if that makes sense.
Okay, this one is important because I think a lot of us, we think that attachment styles kind of affects the way we resolve conflict. What's the connection here?
Okay, if I'm an anxious person, I'm an avoidant person, I'm a secure, right? So in conflict resolution, you have those who avoid dealing with conflict. So if you have an avoidant attachment style, it's going to be very clear. You avoid all sort of conflicts. Okay, you are afraid of conflict, so you become very avoidant. And then there are those who are very accommodating. Right, so if you have a very accommodating conflict resolution style, it means you give in very quickly. That could reflect your anxious attachment style. Okay, if you are someone who is very collaborative, willing to accept different points of view, you may be demonstrating a secure attachment style. If you are someone who likes to compromise all the time, now depending on what you're compromising on, you could more likely than not demonstrate an anxious attachment style. Right, because when you compromise, it's usually giving in for the sake of relationship. And then that's again an anxious attachment style being demonstrated.
Okay, this is interesting. So that means that the skills are still important in conflict management, but our innate inclination during those conversations, actually, if being aware of those, where it's coming from.
Correct.
And that's where attachment styles actually inform us.
Correct.
Okay, this part, this is the question of, we try to understand the style of the other party and we try to adapt ourselves. How do we know that we are not overly giving in and compromising on ourselves just because we want to, find a working relationship based on the other person's style?
So when we talk about conflict resolution and we talk about attachment style, in any interaction, there are 3 dimensions that we must always look at. Okay, so if I were interacting with Waifu on a project, the project is one thing that we need to look out for. But my needs and my expectations, I also need to look out for. His needs, his expectations, we also need to look out for. So if we are all secure, then the 3 things that is needed for us is not neglected. Now, if I just focus on the project, I neglect his opinions, his needs, I neglect myself, then obviously it's showing up. Okay, maybe it's an avoidant attachment style. If I just focus on pleasing him at the expense of my own needs, then that shows up also as someone who is maybe anxious. Right? So if a secure attachment style, what will show up is 2 of us who know what needs to be done, and our opinions matter. We can quarrel, we can challenge each other, but at the same time, we don't take things personally because we know that we are working towards a goal. Okay? And if we are not working towards the goal and it becomes personal, then an attachment style is showing up.
In a sense, we are not asking the audience to give up on their own self and needs.
Correct.
But it's being aware and then knowing how to achieve your needs
at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. This is an interesting question. I think abusive people, it could be in the workplace or in the family, right? How then do we develop secure attachment when we are living with people like that? I guess it could also be parents, right?
Okay. It could be a challenge, but let's say you have an anchor. Your anchor could be your religious beliefs. Your anchor could be another small community that you're part of. That part, the anchor you have, can give you a sense of worth, sense of self. That's a lot more, would be a stronger counterbalance to the abusive. Now, the other thing that you also need to understand is that as you look at these abusive people that surround you, what sort of attachment style, what sort of need are they demonstrating that they may not be getting? And hence the kind of way they treat others and the way they act. Okay, so if you want to be secure, I think there are 2 things you can choose to do. One, isolate yourself from the negative environment, which many of us cannot do. The other one is to view the negative environment in a very different light and to have kind of another alternative environment that you can have access to that can build up your secure attachment. It could be your gym mates, it could be your church mates, it could be your small group, social group setting. I mean, if you have a group of people who just go out there and party all night and drink all night, I don't think that's useful. right? But people that can support you, have meaningful conversations with you, help you realize your own strength, and you able for you to talk about the things that are difficult, then it kind of counterbalances.
Okay, this one I think is a question regarding disorganized, because disorganized kind of trend between wanting to anxious avoidant and avoidant, right? Sometimes they pull away, sometimes they come together. So is it possible for someone to be both avoidant and disorganized at the same time?
Well, if you're disorganized, you already have both already. Congratulations, you are both anxious and avoidant, right? So as a disorganized person, the avoidance is there. Now let me just give you another scenario. I am avoidant because I feel scared, and therefore I want to distance myself. At some point, because I'm lonely, I need attachment, so I come up to you. And once this need for loneliness, this need for attachment, this loneliness has passed, I begin to look at you, maybe take you for granted, or maybe get worried, and then I pull away again. So this whole fluctuation between the two, definitely you have organized avoidance, and you have anxious, you have disorganized.
Okay, this is someone who, when something goes wrong, right, they want to talk about it. But when the other party pull away, they feel anxious and they try to engage more. I guess parent-child also have the issue, right?
Yeah.
The child don't talk to me, the more they don't talk to me, the more I want to engage them.
Yeah.
So how do they approach something like that?
Okay, so these are now communication patterns that surface, all right? So communication styles in moments of peacetime that we talk about. Any kind of conversation needs to be built on the premise of connection. So if I am feeling anxious and I want to talk about my anxiety, this person that I want to talk about my anxiety to may not be in the right frame of mind to want to listen to me, right? So if I come up to this person and I'm viewed generally as kind of like a threat to this person because I like to nag, I like to lecture, and now I'm feeling anxious, it doesn't mean this person is going to sit down and accommodate me, right? So maybe what I'm trying to say is this: do you already have an established relationship with this person? Because if you do, then any time is a great time for a conversation. But if you don't have an established relationship, then any time is a bad time for a conversation.
Okay, the next question is the webinar slides. So don't worry, we are doing even better. We will give you the whole recording on YouTube. And the ebook actually contains all the information in today's sharing.
Yep.
Okay, the very last question. Does someone's competency affect their style?
Well, I can be an avoidant person and still be highly competent. I can be very secure but incompetent. So I think the definition of competency, there's a phrase that we use in, that says people get promoted to new levels of incompetency. It simply means that many of us are promoted to levels where we are not trained to do the work that we are expected to do. Right? So I may be a very good developer and suddenly I'm promoted to lead a team of 12 developers. I'm going to struggle. Okay? So competency is always going to be there. Now, what happens if I'm an incompetent person and I disguise it by trying to build rapport and relationship with people? I try to please people, and if I use that to mask my incompetency, sooner or later people will see through me. Right? So if this is my boss and I just buy him coffee and I want to talk about his family and I'll be nice to him and I'll be asking about his kids, but I'm not delivering on my work, sooner or later he'll say, okay, enough of this personal stuff, show me the work, show me the money. Okay? So yes, competency can mask, competency can be a crutch. Yes, it all depends. Right? So your attachment style is how you show up. Your competency is a different thing altogether.
Okay, so sorry, I think the slide has jumped a bit because I was talking and playing with it, and the team is looking at me and going to scold me later. But in any case, thank you so much, Alistair. I think based on the last question as well, competency is a separate set of issues, right? Because whether someone is competent or not, you need to be fair to the individual based on their competency. But attachment style allows us to understand why and how they react and respond in the relationship you have with them. And I think that will help us better support or even maybe help support their competency at some point. Okay, thank you so much for your time, Alistair. I think this has been helpful, and thank you for staying through with us, though we overshot for half an hour. The last note I have is actually, if you find this kind of talk helpful for your organization, do scan the QR code and drop us a message. We will reach out to you, and then actually there are a lot more of these talks that we can do. And I think fundamentally at the end of the day, what we are really hoping for...
Right, so you scan this, right, and then we're going to give you one more chance to get the QR code if you missed it for the ebook.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally what we're hoping for is to be able to help individuals understand themselves a bit better so that the workplace culture can improve. Yeah, if not, thank you for your time. Don't want to hold you back from lunch or going back to work. It's almost 2.
So we're going to keep this slide up here. And you can, once you scan the QR code for the ebook or to be part of the community, you can go off. We're just going to leave the slides here.
Yeah, and if I screw up the slides, don't worry, we'll send it to you through email. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye. Okay.